After shocking the world in 2024 and making the college ball playoffs, the Indiana Hoosiers are returning a solid amount of talent. However, they lost quarterback Curtis Rourke to the NFL draft, and they brought in Fernando Mendoza out of California, who is actually projected to be one of the top quarterbacks in the next draft class. So Indiana in year two under Kurt Cignetti is looking to have a really, really good team once again. The schedule this year, though, is a little bit tougher, but not the first three games. Old Dominion's a win. Kennesaw State's a win. Indiana State is a win. So they will be 3-0 heading into their first Big Ten matchup with Illinois.
And this is going to be an interesting matchup because you have the quarterback battle. You have the returning quarterback for Illinois and Luke Altmaier staying in the same system that he was in last year against Fernando Mendoza, who is arguably the better quarterback overall, but is playing in a new system. He does have 3 games under his belt in the Indiana system, 3 easy games as well. But against an Illinois team that is looking to have a similar kind of run against Indiana, really could go either way. Home field advantage might play a key factor here for Indiana, but I think early on in the season, Illinois is going to live up to some of the hype and take down the Cinderella team of the Big Ten from last year, getting a huge win over the Hoosiers. But it really could go either way. Indiana is looking very strong defensively. Illinois is looking just as strong, really is a coin flip.
Yeah, this one, again, should be really close, but Illinois is a lot of people's pick to be this year's Indiana. What better test than to actually beat Indiana? We think they're going to do it. As far as being this year's Indiana and making the playoffs, you'll have to watch the Illinois video to find out if we think they can quite get to that. The next matchup for Indiana is a road trip to Iowa, and the Hawkeyes not going to be quite as good this season. Maybe still make a bowl game, but it's kind of iffy. They brought in Mark Gronowski to be the starting quarterback out of South Dakota State. The Iowa offense, though, still probably not going to be that great as we're used to seeing. They'll have a good defense. It'll keep them in this game, but we do believe that the Hoosiers will bounce back heading into their first bye week.
And out of that bye week, they have one of the most difficult road trips you can make in all of college football, going to play the Oregon Ducks at Autzen Stadium, one of the loudest stadium environments you can find anywhere in the United States. Now, Oregon is going to be an interesting team next year, coming off of an undefeated regular season, but losing in an embarrassing fashion to the eventual national champs in the Ohio State Buckeyes. They have Dante Moore slated as the most likely starting quarterback for next season. Some question marks surrounding him, considering he has limited starting experience at UCLA with questionable numbers. I think Dan Lanning is still going to be able to turn him into a serviceable quarterback, especially with the weapons he has available, especially at the wide receiver position. You have Evan Stewart returning. Defensively, they will be still just as strong. It's going to be a real test for Indiana, especially with that Illinois game earlier. They will be more ready for this. I just don't see them being able to pull off this kind of upset on the road here. We saw last year when they were matched up against really their only good opponent of the season in Ohio State, they weren't able to compete with them. And I think that's going to be a similar case this season, even though they might have improved slightly. I think they'll drop to 4-2 here.
Yeah, it's just a really tough game. Like Connor was saying, not really possible in my mind for Indiana to go on the road to Oregon and beat the Ducks. They come back home, though, to face Michigan State. This is a really interesting team. Aiden Childs has a ton of potential, but he's still very raw. And it's tough to say whether or not Michigan State's going to be good. I think they are, but are they able to win these really big games like one against Indiana on the road? I think it might be just a little bit too much to ask of Aiden Childs at this point, but I wouldn't put it completely out of the question. For right now, though, we like the Hoosiers to defend the home turf in that one.
And the big story there is this Michigan State is losing so much on the defensive side of the ball. A lot of their senior leadership is gone. And I think that's just going to be the big difference here, especially with Fernando Mendoza now having several games and being tested to this point to really feel out this Indiana offense and really take control. And I think throughout the rest of the season, he will shine. Now against UCLA, bringing in Nico Imalava from Tennessee, that's a big story for the Bruins there. Should be a great quarterback matchup between these two, but the weapons that the two quarterbacks have are completely different. Indiana has their star wide receiver returning in Elijah Surratt, expected to be one of the best wide receivers in the Big Ten next season. And UCLA, Nico unfortunately does not have that many weapons or that many high profile weapons. And I think that's going to be the difference here. UCLA with the star-studded quarterback without much help offensively or defensively for that matter, with the long road trip, not going to stand much of a chance against Kurt Cignetti and this Hoosiers team. Going to move to 6-2 here.
The next game, also pretty easy, a road trip to Maryland. And we're really not very high on this Maryland team. They're losing quite a bit, and they weren't that great to begin with last season. I think that, there's maybe a little potential with a young team like this, but not to beat a team like Indiana. The Hoosiers will move to 7-2 pretty easily here.
And then the Hoosiers get a road trip to Happy Valley to face the Penn State Nittany Lions. Some people are saying that Penn State is the number one team in the country right now. It's definitely an argument for it. They have everything going in the right direction for that. Returning Drew Allers, their starting quarterback, both their starting running backs in Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, using the transfer portal to address the wide receiver room that has been pretty lackluster recently, particularly getting Trevor Pena. Defensive line is looking great. They have Jim Knowles coming in from Ohio State to be their defensive coordinator. Everything is lining up for James Franklin and this Penn State team. It is natty or bust time for this team. If they can't win a national championship with the team they've assembled here, I don't think they will ever win a national championship in the James Franklin era. And against Indiana, it's gonna be a big win for them. It's gonna boost their playoff resume, especially in a loaded Big Ten conference. They will need this win to help that resume, and I just think they have Indiana outmatched at every possible position.
Yeah, Penn State's just so good this year. And like Connor was saying, they have an argument to be number one. We just trust those top teams like Texas, like Ohio State a little bit more because we've seen Penn State struggle in some of those big games in the past. Next is a home game against Wisconsin. The Badgers have one of the toughest schedules in all of college football. At this point in the season, they're just going to be so beaten down and disheartened that I don't really expect them to compete much. Indiana's got the home field advantage. On top of that, they'll move to 8-3 here, and we're pretty confident in that. And then a very, very late bye week.
And after that late bye week, they will face Purdue on the road. The in-state rivalry game was not very competitive last year. Do not see it being very competitive this year. Purdue lost basically their only star on the offensive side of the ball, and that was their tight end, Max Clare. He entered the transfer portal and is now at Ohio State without any offensive weapon to speak of, and a defense that was probably the worst in the Big Ten last year. I just don't see the Boilermakers escaping at the bottom of the standings in the Big Ten. Indiana will once again win this game and will finish the year off 9-3.
Our way too early projection was 8.45 and 3.55. We predicted the Hoosiers to go 8-4. We have improved that prediction to 9-3. The projection, though, stayed exactly the same. Some of the percentages changed, but in the end, came out to the same number. 5.45 of those wins going to be in the Big Ten. The floor for Indiana, in our opinion, is 8-4. The schedule really not too difficult this season. It's a little bit harder than last year, but still, 8-4, I think, with the amount of talent they have, is probably the worst that they're going to do. The ceiling 11-1, and this is really just going to be if Oregon completely falls apart at the quarterback position. Dante Moore isn't anything like we're expecting him to be, then there's a real possibility that we could see Indiana repeat last season and go 11-1. That have an even stronger argument to make the college football playoff in that scenario. But Doesn't seem super likely in our minds, which is why we have the Hoosiers going 9-3 this season. So, thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you in our next video.